Warning! The following video is a retrospective, not just a review. That means complete and utter spoilers for the story, the gameplay, and especially the ending. But if you're coming here from the far future of the Divinity game series, welcome! I can understand you may not have the time needed to play every single game in the series to get caught up on it all after playing one of the more recent games. Don't worry, I've got you covered. In this video, we'll cover the story, the gameplay, and the lore of the third game in the series, Divinity 2. Yes, Larian doesn't know how to count. Fucking idiots. And anyway, please enjoy and catch up on the story. 6 years after Beyond Divinity, the release of the third game in the series landed. Divinity 2, Ego Draconis, came to North America in 2010 and made a great splash. Reviews were pretty positive, the player base loved it, and it was hailed as a solid title of the action RPG genre. Divinity 2 takes place about 60 years after Beyond Divinity. No, there's no novella to guide us this time, but I picked up every book I could find in the game to figure out what the heck is going on. I'll narrow it down to 4 important sentences. Number 1, Damien is back from Nemesis and is waging war on the entire world. Here's a good question right off the bat. How? How did he do that? I read all the books I could find in the game, talked to everybody, and poked my nose into just about every corner. The game doesn't tell you. We spent the entire second game showing off how difficult it is to travel between worlds. We also have a novella that specifically says he can't return to Rivellon without the help of the Divine One or his followers. I decided to do some investigating. The Larian Studios website says, quote, "With the help of a duped paladin who knew not it was Damien he was fighting with side by side, he broke free from his prison dimension and initially overran the surprised Rivellonian forces." End quote. No he didn't. We beat his ass and shoved him straight back through the portal to Nemesis. Did somebody forget the end of the second game? We didn't break his curse, we followed its rules. At no time does any of Damien's dialogue in the second game say, "My curse is broken and I can come and go as I please now." So yeah, they pulled Damien's return right out of their asses, and they give no lore-specific reason that he's here. You have one main villain to play with, and he has one stipulation on his head. You can't even hand-wave us a reason that he's no longer cursed. Coming back once was enough. I call bullshit. If I have a curse on my head that says I can't eat donuts except on Tuesdays, and then I eat a donut on a Tuesday, it doesn't mean my donut curse is gone. I just followed the rules of the curse itself.
Forbidden donut.
According to its own lore, this game shouldn't be happening. Number 2 on our list, 5 of the 7 races are gone. Like I said earlier, I grabbed every lore book I could get my hands on to figure out what the hell was happening. It's not good. Apparently, the elves were brought to the brink of extinction by the wars with Damien. The few remaining orcs are now slaves, off-screen of course, you never see them. The imps are few, and you can only talk to one of them, and the lizards and the dwarves are never mentioned at all. I gotta say, this was a pretty shitty move on Larian's part. I did some serious digging for this one, watched some developer milestone videos, and read some interviews. Turns out the game was so pressed for time that the studio basically took a hatchet to half of their ideas to meet time deadlines and money restraints.
I think we had like 30 or 40 large levels that we were going to do, where in the end I think we ended up with 10 or so, or no, even less.
Yeah, this is, you remember those,
I do remember, I made most of that stuff. With an enormous world, and a really big world, which was necessary because we had all these races that we were going to cover. You had the elves, and the dwarves, and the orcs, and the undead, and the imps, and the lizards, and well, all the races that were ever present in the previous Divinities were present in this game world.
As a Dragon Knight, you went around the entire world and met with all the races, and you had to convince all these races to send a delegation to the battle tower. And your battle tower would become sort of your headquarters, or where all your armies would amass. And once you had a big enough army to actually take on Damien and his armies,
actually, I'd forgotten about that.
you would have taken all these armies, and then in an RTS type of gameplay, you would attack with humans, dwarves, elves, other dragon knights. It's a whole lot of work because just for the end game, you need to implement an entire RTS.
Big publishers wouldn't give them money, and small publishers didn't have enough money to give. So the entire world was reduced to just humans. Number 3. Damien manipulates dragons and their disciples into assassinating the Divine One. You know how many dragons there are in Rivellon? 1. And he's an asshole that doesn't give a damn about what's going on in the world. Now suddenly there's dragons everywhere. Not only that, but they're teaching humans they considered worthy how to transform into dragons themselves. And then Damien uses his mind powers to make them kill Lucien, the Divine One. Pretty flimsy, I gotta say. I know, the original Rivellon was small and primitive because of programming restraints way back in the day, but the first game openly acknowledges that dragons are an ancient race, a rarity that should be both revered and avoided. Now we have groups of dragons running around imbuing mortals with all the powers they share. And finally, number 4. A new order called the Slayers rises to kill all the dragons and their Dragon Knight disciples as revenge for killing the Divine One. Not only that, but they're very successful. When the game starts, there is only one Dragon Knight left in the entire world. There are still corrupted dragons remaining, but they're beyond reach at this point. The Dragon Knight Talana is the last of her kind.
I am the last one.
I gotta say, this setup was not very pleasing. All the races gone, ignoring Damien's divine curse. The story and the lore from the first 2 games has been pitched out the window. But you know what? Let me try and be fair. If the rest of the game is solid, it can't be too bad, right? I'll do some good and bad stuff the game has to offer so we can get a better handle on what we're playing here. First of all, the world is beautiful. A lot of detail goes into the architecture, the grass, the trees, and the landscape in general. Dungeons are detailed. Important and unimportant locations are filled with special details, good lighting effects, and personality. A lot of love and care went into the setting itself. It all flows and meshes very well. The canyons and bodies of water make for some gorgeous sweeping shots to simply stand and stare at. It's gorgeous. Since we're in a 3D environment, we can jump, dodge magic and arrows, climb ladders, all that good stuff. I still think it's funny that every time I get to the top of a ladder, I do this little flippy trick. Whee! Ha ha! Whee! I'd break my neck even trying to do that, but it's fun to watch. And since we can jump now, it makes for some good ladder and jumping puzzles. Strange though, the game doesn't incorporate falling damage in any capacity. Kind of a strange decision, really. Watch this. And not a scratch on me. Subquests and side missions are no longer mandatory. Cough, cough. But if you want to continue the story, you'll need to do at least the majority of them to be high enough level. The loot system is still random and unreliable, so you need to poke your nose everywhere if you want to get any of the good stuff to arm yourself with. There are even armor sets like in previous games. I got the Archmage of Alaroth set. It doesn't really look like something an Archmage would wear, but let's see what the description says. Unique and incredibly powerful, the pieces of this set were fashioned by Alaroth's first Archmage, the famed Mardanius. Though he was buried in his paraphernalia, grave robbers must have desecrated his last resting place, for soon parts of the set were sold on the black market for exorbitant prices, and they sometimes fell into good hands, though more often into bad ones. Number 1, no, it's not unique. You see foot soldiers wearing this exact same set all the time, everywhere you go. Number 2, Mardanius was not the Archmage of Alaroth. He was the town's founder. He started Alaroth as a unique gathering of the 7 races to heal those who needed aid regardless of their race. He wasn't the town's ruler. And number 3, he fashioned this armor? So you're telling me that this guy...
Taste my power!
After founding a village, took up armor smithing, enchanting, and made himself a set of plate mail? If anything, Mardanius was a beekeeper, not a metalsmith. Also, he was buried in it? I seem to recall him getting burnt to a crisp in the first game, so somebody found out where he died, took his remains home to Alaroth, dressed him up in the plate mail that he made, and buried him that way? That's a bit of a stretch, don't you think? What would an old man like him do with plate mail? And it's named the Archmage of Alaroth set, so it was made after the town was founded. Mardanius could barely walk on his own, much less do so in fucking armor. So basically the entire description of this armor set is a bold-faced lie. Not only do I not look like an Archmage, but the lore attached to this set makes no sense at all. Somebody didn't do his homework when they were designing armor sets. Hell, at least in World of fucking Warcraft, I was wearing a big blue dress that made it look like I could shoot fireballs out of my hands.
Was thinking sillier and thoughts in my hands burst into flames. Few moments later and you'll never be the same.
I haven't even started on the story yet, and you can already kind of see what we're working with here. I think they're trying to use names and places from the first game to invoke nostalgia, but it really doesn't work. Number one, it doesn't really align with what those things actually were, and number two, they just come across as an awkward patchwork of people that didn't do their homework. This series started in 2002, so it's not old enough to have any sort of nostalgic value, much less a new audience that wouldn't get the reference and would go back to play the first games. This, combined with the development videos I watched, basically tell me that the guys making the game overstepped their resources and didn't pay attention to the plot of the previous games. This made for a shoddy game with only half the ideas they wanted and a story that made little sense when you started poking at the details. Okay, focus on the good. Well, the menus continue to get better. Whoever's designing the Divinity series menus needs a raise because they're always concise and beautiful. We have a grid system now, still with category tabs and instant sorting buttons. You can see all your character's equipment and stats nicely arranged, but what really sticks out is the skill system. It's been streamlined nicely, and although there's no ice magic anymore, there's a great variety to choose from. Not only can you pick whatever you like, but you get to see a little movie of what each skill does at the bottom. This is brilliant. I love it. You can watch a skill in action and see what it looks like before you devote points to it. The initial cap for each skill is 5 points, but later on you can upgrade them all the way up to 15 points. Let me tell you, nothing's deadlier than a maxed out fireball spell.
Give me a fight you want. I see. Damn dog.
It's a bit of a mixed bag in the technical department too. You get points to assign stats every time you level up, along with a single skill point you can put wherever you want. A few things bit the bullet in the name of streamlining. There's no crafting potions, the reputation stat is gone, and you really don't have to repair weapons or armor anymore. These were an improvement to me since I didn't really care for any of those things in the first place. Okay, so, all that technical and lore stuff aside, how's the story? Well, to be honest, there's not much story here compared to the first two games. Divine Divinity and Beyond Divinity had sprawling narratives that took you to various locations, talking with lots of people and accomplishing lots of different objectives. That wasn't counting the side quests. Divinity 2 has a fairly simple story compared to the other two games. And much like the first two games, 90% of the gameplay is sub-missions and side quests, but we'll focus on the main plot so the review isn't hours long. You play as a budding slayer, one of the people devoted to killing dragons and dragon knights. They're responsible for the assassination of the Divine One, so it's your job to wipe out every single one in the world. You've just finished your basic training and have come to the village of Farglow to receive your magical gifts. First off, you get the ability to read minds. This is a great way to get information, extra skill points, and important quest details. It was really interesting to find out what people were really thinking and even to steal knowledge from them.
Look, another newborn tries the new gimmick on me. I should place a no trespassing sign on my brain or something.
The only downside is that doing so puts you into an experience debt. The more important the information, the more XP it costs. It doesn't take XP away, it merely gives you a bill that you have to pay before you can continue getting XP for yourself. I found that mind-reading boss characters almost always gives me extra skill points. It's a trade-off, so you have to use it sparingly. There's a finite number of quests and enemies in the game, so use caution if you want to make sure you level nicely. There's no place where enemies respawn, so once things are dead, they're dead for good. So there's no grinding and there's no getting XP back if you use too much of it. You also get the ability to see the ghosts of the dead and all the knowledge of dragons that the Slayers have stolen.
It will also color your eyes silver, the noted characteristic of the Slayer, which will enable you to see the spirits of the dead. The ritual has a side effect, but nothing can be done about that. Then prepare to become a dragon slayer. And that's that.
Because of this mind-altering process, your eyes turn silver and glow, the mark of a Slayer to the general public. At the same time, though, gaining all this knowledge and power all at once scrambles your brains and makes you forget all about your combat training, magical prowess, and skills. This is probably the most legitimate reason for a hero to start at level 1 that I've ever seen. There's only so much room in your head, so you have to work your way back up to your greatness. So you roam around the village so you can choose your class type. Warrior, Mage, and Survivor are your choices, even though you can craft your character however you like. This is basically just nudging a few stats up and giving you your starting weapon. I was a Warrior in the first game and an Archer in the second game, so I chose Wizard this time around. I'll be honest, picking the Wizard path in the Divinity games has always been the quote-unquote hard mode setting for things. Up until the halfway point of the game, you're a glass cannon without the cannon bit. Your spells are so weak, they barely matter. The series has always favored sword and shield characters over the other character types. It's just the way they've done things. I could get off a spell or two, but I would always have to switch straight over to my two-hander to get things done. Until the later part of the game when magic stops sucking, you're basically stuck with the weapon of your choice while you wait. And if the archmages in this world wear plate mail, I guess I'm on the right track. Anyway, you receive word that a dragon has been sighted in a place called Broken Valley, the first region of the game. Commander Rhodes, your boss, tells you that you're all heading that way to see what's what. Talking with the locals reveals plenty of details, but Rhodes doesn't want you to go into battle with the dragon because you're a weak new blood. She instead tells you to go aid the locals, mount the defenses, and all that sort of stuff. The village of Broken Valley becomes your first quest hub where you can help people, oogle at the local barmaids, slay some goblins, all the usual fare. There's really nothing out of the ordinary here.
I said gallons of beer to mindless guards all day. I should really go to Alaroth and make a new career.
I do find it interesting that Larian is still copying out of Blizzard's playbook. I mean, golden exclamation marks to show who's got quests for me? Really? Was copying Diablo 2 and StarCraft not enough for you guys? Now you're gonna steal basic design mechanics as well? Remember in the first two games when you had to, talk to people to get quests? You didn't know who was going to say what, so it encouraged you to explore and be rewarded for doing so. Now I can just see who's important and who isn't from a mile away because of those fucking things parked over their heads. And yes, when you're done with the quest, the dark question mark turns into a gold one. Inexcusable, Larian. This is just a blatant cut and paste. I don't know if maybe you've got a spy in Blizzard stuff, or if you guys are all just Blizzard fanboys, but my god, grow up. Get your own ideas.
This is an outrage!
When you've had your fill of subquests and goblins, you head back to look for Commander Rhodes and your two other Slayer companions. Instead, you run into Talana, the last Dragon Knight.
I am the last one!
Not another of the Order. I've seen too much of such vermin today already. If I still had my strength, I'd rip you apart, just as I did so many Slayers. You pathetic soldiers who, like bloody excrement, persistently trail in my wake. But Road, she fights like a demon possessed. And that sword, how it did sting, wielding such power that it might extinguish the life of Talana, last of the Dragon Knights.
I am the last one.
When you get ready to kill her and claim the glory for yourself, she transfers her powers to you and dies. Now, you are both a Slayer and a Dragon Knight, the Hunter and the Hunted. This was a tagline for the game, being the Hunter and the Hunted, even though nobody ever comes after you for the entire game, so you're not really hunted at all. Dragon Knights have the ability to turn into dragons, and you get a taste of it in Talana's memories. She shows you that the Dragon Knights are not out terrorizing the world, but trying to stop Damien. Not only that, but the dragons and the Dragon Knights were framed for the Divine One's death. Then Damien shows up. I gotta say, dude looks good for somebody pushing 90.
Time to wake up, my sleeping beauty. Vivid dreams you have. I quite enjoyed that little scene. A dragon slayer turned dragon knight. Such delicious irony, rich and thick, like clotted blood. But I warn you, little hatchling, should you attempt to make Talana's dream come true, our next encounter won't end with the spilling of so little blood, clotted or otherwise. Remember that.
He basically tells you to stay out of his way and just leaves. Zandelor shows up right after him, and he looks pretty good for his new 3D rendering, though I don't remember him ever having glasses. Maybe the sprites just weren't detailed enough. He must know magic sucks in this game too, since he's got a two-hander on his back instead of his wizard staff. Zandelor tells you that you've got a big destiny ahead of you, and that being both a Slayer and a Dragon Knight makes you privy to a lot of powers and gifts. Talana, now living in your head since you have all of her powers and memories, tells you that Damien has a sore weakness, Yagurna. The Divine One executed her in Child of the Chaos, which makes Damien go down the path of evil to get revenge on the entire world. According to Talana, Damien soul-forged himself to her right as she was being executed. Because she was dead when the spell was cast, it changed the nature of the spell. Now, to resurrect Yagurna is to kill Damien. So the final mission of the game is not to kill the bad guy, but to resurrect somebody else. I can actually get behind that. That's actually pretty unique. I like it. According to both Zandelor and Talana, the first order of business is to reclaim the Battle Tower. The Battle Tower is the birthright of all Dragon Knights, a sort of base of operations for you to stay in. Unfortunately, it's been taken over by a necromancer and it needs cleaning out. So you quest for a long time to try and find a way in, getting the proper teleport orb and things like that. Just as you're about to go claim your tower, Damien shows up again.
Did you know, hatchling, that as a ruler, it is much better to be feared than to be loved? Problem is, it has turned out you are quite fearless. However, there is a very fine line between heroism and stupidity, and in deciding to oppose me, you have most certainly shown the latter. Yagurna is not yours to quest for. No! The journey ends here! Now!
Why doesn't he just kill me? He obviously sees me as a threat, and he doesn't want to fight me himself? And he's not an illusion or anything. The game's internal achievement system says, met Damien, so how did he know where I was, and how did he know what I know about Yagurna? It's really confusing, and it's kind of a plot hole. On the plus side, I gotta say I love the Battle Tower. You get a throne room, servants, lots of stuff. I felt like the king sitting in this place. You even get a personal dancer and a musician at your throne. It's pretty sweet. Normally there would be lots of Dragon Knights running around enjoying the place, but since you're the last, you're basically in charge.
I am the last one.
Okay, I won't use that clip anymore. I just really like that movie. Anyway, the Battle Tower needs to be populated by people who are both talented and loyal to you. You have two choices for each of the 4 posts in the tower: Necromancer, Alchemist, Enchanter, and Trainer. The island it sits on, personified by this lady,
Be welcome, Dragon Knight, to Sentinel Island, the home of dragons of old.
Pulls in some of the worthy and the not-so-worthy for you to choose from. Doing subquests and reading a few minds will help you sort out who you want and why. The two alchemists, for example. One of them has 5 doctorates in alchemy, and the other one is a doofus who's just a really good liar. One of the enchanters specializes in weapons, and the other in armor, and so on and so forth. Once you've chosen your team and cleaned the tower out of all of its enemies, it's yours. Then Damien shows up again.
So, the dragon is about to hatch with the aid of the elusive Xandalore. I should have known you'd still crawl out of the woodwork, old goat.
Hold your tongue, villain! How dare the scourge of Rivellon show his face here? You shall pay yet for the atrocities you committed!
Ha! You were up there in your ivory tower of moral absolutes.
Only a Sith deals in absolutes.
And still you lose perspective. The Divine's death, the war. It was he who caused it by murdering my beloved.
Lucian did the right thing. Igerna worked for the Black Ring, and therefore she had to die. He would have done it again if need be, and so would I.
Kerr! I loved her, and you butchered her! Now for every drop of her blood you spilled, oceans of mans will flow, starting with that of your new pet here. My armadas will see to that!
He is launching an attack on your tower. Go on now, become the dragon, and show him your might!
Damien again just walks away and doesn't kick your face in. He's about as effective as Dr. Evil at this. He sends his armada to destroy the tower, and it's finally time to become a dragon, as all dragon knights do. Becoming the dragon is probably the high point of the game. Earning the battle tower is a great achievement, and finally earning your wings is just a cherry on the freaking cake. You can shoot fireballs, breathe fire, fly, destroy siege engines and other dragons. It's great. This was probably the most enjoyable part about this entire game. You can't shoot at normal enemies, and towns have anti-dragon barriers on them though. There were a few missed opportunities here. What if I'm getting my ass kicked and I just want to turn into my dragon form and burn all my enemies? Can't do it. Normal enemies just vanish when you're the dragon. Oh well, it's still a lot of fun. You're not invincible either, so make sure you never sit still or you'll get shot down. After Damien's attacking armada has been seen to, the quest to resurrect Igerna truly begins. Lots of exploring, subquests, and other stuff reveals that in order to resurrect her, you need to go to the Hall of Echoes. The Hall of Echoes is basically the underworld, sealed off from mortals. Her soul is there, and in order to bring her back, you have to go there yourself and bust her out. This requires 4 things, and no, they're not magical elemental crystals. Give Larian a little credit. You need the physical location, a spell to reveal the door, a sigil to open the door, and a magic amulet to keep you from dying when you go in. Getting these 4 things makes up the second half of the game. The meat and potatoes is still all the subquesting and little side missions, so it's basically a long time before you get all 4 and can press on. You get to pick how long or short your adventure is, since the main quest is always highlighted for you in the menu system. It'll be a while though, and the quest is certainly a long and interesting one. It includes meeting the Patriarch, one of the most interesting characters in the Divinity series. He's a true dragon, not a dragon knight.
They are my sworn enemy, those with that specific ocular shade. But bright though such silver shimmers may shine, they are outshadowed by the draconic essence that pervades your soul. I am the patriarch of the old creator race, true dragon, one of few within the universe beyond the great chaos. I bid you welcome in this lair. May it be a haven to you, away from the spear and fire that hunt our kind.
He's basically a demigod. The Patriarch tells you that Damien has twisted all the dragons in Rivellon into soulless monsters, that they're not to blame for the assassination of the Divine One, and neither are their disciples, the Dragon Knights.
The Patriarch's mind is a whirl of power too strong and overwhelming to grasp. With sharp pangs of pain, you hasten to leave this great ocean of knowledge, but not without a much desired effect. You can feel that, no matter how infinitely small a part of it you have understood, your dragon form will be the stronger for it.
He tells you where to find the entrance of the Hall of Echoes, something that he Oh, god damn it.
Well done indeed. The old lizard didn't want to open the Hall of Echoes for me, but it would seem I shall find it after all. Your quest is futile, dragon. War cannot be avoided, only postponed. Realize that all you do is in vain. The pieces are set, and the game is about to begin. But first, I shall finally remove the pawn that is blocking my offensive. Farewell, then. It has been a pleasure.
Food of Damien to eat, but it is he who will prevail. The Hall of Echoes draws ever closer.
Once more, Damien leaves a handful of lackeys behind instead of fighting me himself, and I'm growing less and less convinced that he's the threat everybody says he is. The Damien from the old games was a monster, a Machiavellian villain that tricked demons, conquered worlds, and slew entire races of people. This Damien is a cartoonish parody, showing up every now and then to twist his mustache at me. He's about as threatening as the guys he leaves behind to fight you. What, he's pushing 90 so he doesn't want to physically fight me anymore? If I'm such a problem for his offensive, shouldn't he just kill my ass and be done with it? With the sigil to open the way and the amulet to protect you, you make your way down into the Hall of Echoes at last. This place is eerie, filled with ghosts and fleshy landscapes. The dead don't like you being there, shielded or not, and there's a few people here that want a piece of you. The climax of the game turns out to be a boss run, where you face more powerful versions of all the bosses in the game. This is a marathon fight, and it's not easy. You better be high level, wearing great gear, and have a stack of potions in your bags if you don't want to get your ass handed to you. When that's done, Yagurna's soul awaits. To finally release her, you must enter her memories and stop her from being executed. Since she's basically in hell, she has to relive the day of her execution over and over again.
Yagurna, by the powers vested in me by blessings divine, I hereby sentence you to death for actively furthering the interests of man's most hated enemy, the Black Ring.
Do as you must. Providential prodigy you think you are. I am guilty of nothing but awakening powers in Damien that would have roused no matter how, and of giving him my love.
The demon within his soul could have been kept caged if it were not for the darkness you whispered into his mind. For this crime, there shall be no clemency. Farewell, Yagurna.
Lucian, stay your hand. An intruder. You, step out from the shadows. Who are you?
Be welcome then, noble dragon.
Tell us, if it please you, why are you here? Out of the question. Take one more step forward and we will be forced to attack you.
And neither have we. Now, die with honor.
Remember, Yagurna was a member of the Black Ring cult, so yeah, she went to her own little hell when she died. All you have to do is break the cycle. This means fighting Yagurna's memory of Zandalore and Lucian, the Divine One. This was actually a pretty clever and intense boss fight. Lucian is basically a demigod, and Zandelor is a 700-year-old wizard who's no pushover either. Zandelor likes to spam healing spells, though, so you have to focus on him first if you want to have any chance of winning. Finally, at long last, Yagurna's soul is freed and Damien will die.
My headsman lay dead on the floor. The memory has been resolved. I shall live again. Wake up in that cold grave to find warm arms to embrace me. Damien, my love, I shall live again. And for you, my sweet hero. This is where it all ends.
Or not. You pop up trapped in a crystal prison next to none other than Lucian, the Divine One himself. He's not dead, just imprisoned in this alternate dimension. Everything you've been told is a lie. It's not Talana that's been in your head this whole time, but Yagurna herself. By breaking the cycle of torment she suffered in the Hall of Echoes, you freed her, and she lives again. Damien not only doesn't drop dead, but now is basically invincible.
Time to wake up, my sleeping beauty.
My love, at last.
I battled tirelessly to release you from death's grip, and here you are, alive and free without my help. How?
I trained a pet. So acquiescent the little darling turned out to be. But I'll tell you all about that later. Is everything ready?
Oh yes, we are prepared. Come, my love. It is time for our conquest to begin.
And that's the end. Fuck you. You know what? I take back what I said about the first two endings of this series. The Divine One raising the baby was a hopeful new beginning. Damien making vague threats was an okay sequel baiting material, setting him up to be the main villain. This is inexcusable. This ending is a slap in the face. Not only did you free Yagurna and doom the world, but you will never get to fight Damien at all. All that teasing and talking and threatening me, and we don't get to fight? No, fuck you. Just reusing all the bosses from before is not only unacceptable, but it's lazy. That's NES era baby stuff. Larian Studios already had a sequel bait ending reputation at this point, but it was already over the fucking top. All my questing, 40 some odd hours of exploring, fighting, and traveling, all to get my ass shoved in this crystal prison while Baldy McFucknut and his girlfriend over there just destroy everything despite all I've done and accomplished? Fuck you. And you know what else? Yagurna was beheaded according to the book Child of the Chaos. How did she get her head reattached? As a matter of fact, how did Damien get her body, which is in perfect condition and not decayed, by the way, and move it to his fortress? There's just so many stupid, obvious oversights in this game, it hurts. Alright, so taking a step back for a moment. At the end of the day, Divinity 2 really is a solid game. It gets a solid rating of a 7 out of 10 from me. It's a great example of the action RPG genre. Just don't pay too close of attention to the background lore, or the main storyline, or the ending. Focusing in on the gameplay brings home this rating. The battle tower is a joy to run around in and upgrade. The combat is quick and satisfying. The loot is questionable, but better than before. The world is gorgeous and greatly realized for what it is. Larian's snarky and hilarious writing holds the whole thing together in the subquests. If not for its quirky side missions, honestly funny dialogue, and snarky conversation responses you get, the ending would have been a truly poisonous experience. It almost ruined the entire thing for me. And yes, I know there's an expansion pack that continues the story from here. Trust me, after seeing the story get ballsed up like this, I'll be back. So yeah, Divinity 2 Ego Draconis was the first Divinity game to have an expansion pack. It was called Flames of Vengeance and completed the story of Divinity 2. We'll cover that next time. Thanks for listening, and keep gaming.